Hey, how's it going? This is Mitch from Mitch Music. Hope you enjoyed that intro video. Today we are going to talk all about the basics of slide guitar. We're going to talk about types of slides. We're going to talk about what finger to put a slide on. We're going to talk about how to get a good sound with a slide, and we're going to talk about how to set your guitar up to get the best sound with the slide. Do me a favor, and if you haven't already, go ahead and click subscribe, and let's get started. So personally, I use two different types of slide material. I typically use a brass slide or a glass slide. There's also steel slides. There are also ceramic slides. But I find that glass or brass work best, and typically when I've come across other slide players, they seem to think the same. So we're going to go with that. What finger do I choose to put them on? Well, that depends entirely on how I'm going to use it. So let's talk about the ring finger first, which I think is probably the most common finger that slide players are using. I like to use the ring finger because it gives a little bit more control over the slide, I think, than say the pinky. It's a bigger finger, and not just that, but think about most of your kind of guitar licks. I mean, most of us out here are, really comfortable with our ring finger, and if anything, maybe a little guilty of not using our pinky enough. So using that ring finger, it's already a finger that is really strong and kind of knows where to go. So I find that I get the best tone and intonation when I use the ring finger. Now, having said that, musically, there's a kind of specific scenario where that works best, and that is where you're playing single line passages. I'm jamming, I'm just playing melodies. I am only playing single lines. That is when I find that the ring finger slide works the best. But I also use a pinky. And by the way, this ring finger slide is a Dunlop blues bottle. But I also use a pinky slide, and for me, for the pinky, I use this Dunlop 212. I use it because it fits perfectly over my pinky, like so. I use a pinky slide when I am doing one of a few things. Either using the slide as an accent, so it's not a main part of the part I'm playing, but I am throwing in little slide licks, here and there. The second would be that I'm comping, so I'm playing chords. Maybe some of them I'm playing with slide, some I'm playing without slide. For instance, maybe I'm playing something like an A blues, and I play the one chord like this. But then I want to play the 4 chord, and I want to slide in, so I go back to the 1. Hit the 5 with the slide, 4 with the slide, and then back to the fretted 1. So that's a scenario where it works out really well to have it on that pinky because I'm able to fret with my 3 most dominant fingers. It also works really well if you want to play behind the slide licks. So something like this lick, which you heard in the intro video. So if you notice, I'm fretting the notes on the 10th fret while I'm using the slide over the 12th fret. Kind of gives you some unique textures and allows you to kind of put it together to make some pretty cool slide riffs, play things really quickly, or just kind of play some stuff that boggles the mind because it's not really something you can do with a slide, but you're wearing a slide, You'll see players like Joey Landreth make great use of this. In fact, that's where I learned it. So, now that we've talked a little bit about the type of slide, let's talk about slide technique. So for this, I'm going to switch back over to my ring finger slide because that is where I primarily play. And I want to talk about muting, because muting is the biggest difference between somebody who is a good slide player and somebody who is not a good slide player. So what do I mean when I say that? Big beginner mistake that I'll see is that people will play slide where they are just completely open. They just no fingers behind the slide and no muting. Maybe they have a pick in the right hand, just right. So that's pretty simple. I just kind of played up a blues scale, but you hear all those sympathetic notes. It's rattling. It's kind of rough versus something like this, which is the same notes but much cleaner. So what did I do different? Instead of having my fingers completely open, I'm going to mute behind the slide. So let's start off with just placing that slide correctly. So we're going to come here to the 5th fret, and I want you to just play harmonics, just open harmonics. Now that level of tension, or that level of pressing down, is the same that I want you to apply with the slide now. So put that slide directly over that 5th fret and just strum it open. And you should get you should pretty much be able to get most of the strings in that, most of the notes in that. Now we're going to take these 2 fingers that are floating back here, and we are going to put them down behind the slide. That'll help tremendously to block out any unwanted tones, sympathetic vibrations, and all that kind of stuff. So now you've got your left hand muted properly. Now let's talk about our right hand, because right hand muting is just as important as left hand. So I have a technique that I'm using for this, and I would compare it to the claw method in country fingerstyle. I basically use these 3 fingers as my go-tos, and I am muting everything except the string that I am actually plucking. So typically for me, I'm going to be plucking with my pointer finger. So let's say I am going to play a note on the G string. I'm going to bring my thumb down and mute the bottom 3 strings, and then I am going to take my top fingers here and mute the top 2 strings, right? So right now in this position to play on the G string, it's going to look like I'm muting the B string with my middle finger and the high E with my ring finger on my right hand. Now that leaves that G string open to my pointer finger. Now, with that muted behind, I can play super clean licks. And if I move strings, I go up, the whole position just shifts up. Up another one. Same kind of deal. Right now I'm just leaving that top one open, but I'm using my thumb to mute the rest of the strings. So basically, to recap that, you're going to put your fingers down behind the slide to mute up here on the neck. And you're also going to use the claw method to make sure that only the string that you're actually plucking is unmuted at any given time. This is going to eliminate any sympathetic vibrations and give you the cleanest possible tone. So now that we know what slide we're going to use, we know how to use the slide, let's talk about how to set up your guitar to get the best tone. So something I noticed that discourages a lot of guitar players is that they think that they need to have really high action or really heavy strings, and they don't want that because they're only playing a little bit of slide. Well, I am here to tell you that that is not true. Everything that you heard recorded at the beginning of the video and everything that you're seeing me play now is being done on my 335 here, which has 10s and quite low action. So I found a way to make it work. Initially, I struggled with that. But what I've learned is that it's all about having a light touch. And if your touch is super light, you could use 9s. So that is what I encourage people to focus on. I encourage people to focus on having a super light touch so that the gauge strings or the height of your action does not really matter. Now, having said that, I do find that 11s with low action is my favorite electric guitar setup for slide because it does allow you to just hit the string just a little bit harder with buzzing out and, kind of get a little bit more oomph behind your note. But having said that, again, I am a firm believer that if you use a light touch, it doesn't matter what gauge strings you use. So again, I use 10s, I keep my action low, and I also play in standard tuning. I do all those things because I'm a working guitar player and I'm not going to drag a whole second guitar that's in open E and, has 12s and whatever, for intermittent little slide parts here and there. All right, well, I hope that you found today's video helpful. Once again, that is all the basic techniques that you're going to need to actually get started with slide guitar. Let me know now down below in the comments if there's anything that you would like further explanation on or anything you'd like to see a further video on. There will be a part 2 coming out where I'm going to teach some of the licks that I played in the intro video or in the intro clip. There will be a part 2 coming out where I'm going to play some of the licks. There will be a part 2 There will be a part 2 coming out where I'm going to teach how to play a few of the licks that were demonstrated in the first slide video and in the intro of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.